covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody, welcome back. JJ and Alex from 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Alex, Curie, Stevenson, Sylvester, Sly, nice enough to sit in for JJ today. He was getting a nice couple days off, and that's all he's allowed. He's back to work. All right. Sly, thanks for hanging out, first of all. I know you and I both enjoy doing these shows.
Oh, yeah.
At least I do.
Yeah.
We have actually probably too much of a good time, but don't tell HR that, right?
Anytime you can let me just ramble, I'm all for it.
The off-the-air stuff is just as funny or funnier and not for airplay.
Yes,
fine.
There we go.
There you go. Joining us on the program right now to kick off the hour, our program brought to you by G2G Bars, all natural ingredients and no preservatives make the G2G Bar the perfect protein bar. Steve Bartle, Ute Insider for KSLSports.com, kicking off the cut. Let's get to it right now.
It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is what made the cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
And, of course, this portion of the hour brought to you by Trajan Wealth, TRAJAN Wealth.com. That's Trajan Wealth for all of your trusted local retirement needs. Steve Bartle, our Ute Insider for KSLSports.com. What a crazy last 24 hours. We knew there was rumblings, of course, that there was going to be a Nate Johnson sighting up at the U. Ends up being true. And then yesterday, by the end of the day, we saw a commitment via social media from Isaac Wilson. Are either of those things a shock to you?
Man, it has been a whirlwind of sorts the last 24, 48, 72. Going
96
back to,
hours, yeah.
Yeah, going back to last week. It's been wild. So it's been interesting with Isaac Wilson. What was particular? We'll start there because that's obviously the big one. With Isaac, when he hit the portal, I thought it was interesting. I was talking with the source, and they made it clear that he had an open door to potentially return, which isn't common for guys that hit the portal at Utah.
Right.
Just the way that, and obviously I think Whittingham has changed his tune, has softened his stance a little bit on that, but typically, it's not as just plainly said like that oftentimes. So, that was interesting, and I think with Isaac, getting into the portal and getting a feel for interest and his options, it's what he had at Utah, the experience he gained, bringing in Jason Beck, obviously, having to learn a new offense and all that sort of stuff. You understand why Isaac, would have entered the portal, first of all, with the changes that Utah went through and just kind of the difficult season. But, with Jason Beck in place now, what I've heard is that, Beck and Isaac have had some pretty productive conversations over the last little bit and seem to really help improve Utah's chances in bringing Isaac back. And I think, obviously his 2024 campaign was up and down, and there were a lot of bumps along the road and a lot of issues and a lot of struggles. And it was just a season that I think Utah, if they could go back to August, probably would have handled a little bit differently, because I think he was thrust into a situation that he wasn't fully prepared. And so, in the fold with Devin Dampier coming in, I think is pretty significant for Utah. So, it'll be, we'll learn a lot more about Isaac over the next year or so with how he works and how he fits in the offense. But I think, just getting him back is a good thing. You don't want to lose a true freshman that gained the experience that he did this season. So to get him back, that's a big deal. With Nate Johnson, that's interesting. Obviously, he played here for a couple seasons, made an impact in a few games. Was instrumental in that Florida win at Rice-Eccles Stadium. The question with him was never his athleticism. He's always been dynamic, and he came to Utah, came to Salt Lake City. He met with Utah yesterday to discuss a return, which would be primarily as a receiver, not a quarterback. And I think that is interesting. And when you go back to his recruitment, what was really interesting about that was Utah was interested in him early on as just an athlete. It wasn't until the summertime that Kyle McDonald and the offense staff re-offered him as a, which is ultimately what led to his commitment. But their first interest in him and why they were recruiting him was because he was a dynamic athlete that they liked at receiver, and they always felt he would ultimately end up there. So, it's an opportunity potentially for Utah to bring him back in. And, with the departures that Utah's had, at that receiver spot with the veterans moving on, you can use an influx of potential and talent, and they've added a couple pieces. They're going to add a couple other pieces, certainly in the transfer portal process. But I think Nate Johnson, just given his familiarity with the program and city and all that, I think, would be a really exciting thing to welcome him back to Utah as well.
Yeah, man, I remember having those conversations before he got here when he was running those, 10-1, 10-300s. And, an article that he was, probably you, he said it as like he wants to be a quarterback. And so it was just like, okay, hopefully he had some flexibility in that. But I think he's, if he's, smartened up, just understood it as everybody, grass isn't always greener. Maybe this is the right spot for me. And, I know he loved the program. The culture was big for him. And so I'm glad that he's able to come back. But I want to know what really, if you had any source of information that went into that Isaac Wilson decision, was it I tested the portal and there was nothing out there that I really loved, or was it like I ultimately wanted to be here and like if I just saw any interest and it just wasn't, what I wanted to be and I'm willing to develop? What really went into that decision for Isaac?
Yeah, I think it's never just black and white, right? There's always shades of gray in that, and there's always multiple things that go into a decision like this. And I do think that Isaac got into the portal, probably expecting significant interest, given the fact that he was a true freshman, that he led Utah to a couple of key wins. He gained a lot of experience. And, there was interest in him. And I think, I know that BYU was interested, at least initially. UCLA was interested in him as well. And there were other programs that I'm sure called and did their due diligence with Isaac as well. And so how interested were they in Isaac? I can't say for certain, but I think Utah was pretty interested in bringing him back. And I think, again, those conversations with Jason Beck were pretty significant in Isaac deciding to come back to Utah. So, it's a mixture of a lot of things, right? When we're talking about something like this, kid decides to enter the portal to assess his options. How interested are these other programs in him? That's certainly something to be answered later on as we learn more and more. But I think ultimately it was those discussions with Jason Beck that secured that decision for Utah with Isaac.
Do you feel like that was kind of a quick decision? In the portal, it's been 1 week, 1.5 weeks. Do you feel it was rather like were you able to get other teams to kind of open up and see everybody across the country, even other bowl games to finish up? Do you feel like that decision was kind of made with just, transfer portal vibe these last few years for him to decide to come back? Do you think that was pretty quick?
It was quick, but that is the nature of the transfer portal. I just think,
take your opportunities.
When you've got teams know that they've got to act quick in the transfer portal, because if you don't, somebody else is going to sweep in on the guy that you potentially like. And so, it is all of these decisions, all of these situations, these processes, recruitments, all of it is happening at an accelerated rate. Mm-hmm. And I think, Isaac got a pretty good idea of the interest. Obviously, had he played it out and waited a little bit longer, there certainly could have been other opportunities that arose. But I think he had a pretty good sense of the interest in him and ultimately decided that Utah was still the best option for him.
Utah County product, American Fork High School product, Carson Ryan, goes from UCLA to Utah and now has transferred out of Utah to BYU. What were the things that went into that decision for him? Obviously, the tight end room at Utah was a pretty open race. I think that a guy like Carson Ryan could have fit. But what made you feel like that young man said, okay, I'm going to hit the transfer portal, and that going down to BYU was the best fit for him?
Yeah, it's I think the offense was a big thing because Carson wasn't the only tight end that hit the portal. C.J.
Right.
Jacobson, who's been with the program for a couple of years as well, he too hit the portal, and so I think that speaks to a little bit of the change in terms of personnel, what we can expect from a Jason Beck offense. I think we'll still see tight end usage at Utah, not to the extent that we've seen under Andy Ludwig in the last couple of years, with 12 and 13 personnel being arguably the two biggest personnel packages for Utah. But I do think we'll continue to see that the 12 personnel will see a lot more 11 personnel, and I think that ultimately, just given the types of bodies that Utah has in that tight end room with Landon King and Dallin Bentley, who is entrenched in that wide tight end starter position, with Landon being kind of the pass catching type, it was probably I shouldn't say probably. I know that the offense was a significant factor for Carson in his decision and why he decided to enter the portal and head to BYU.
What do you think has been major focus? Of course, at first, offensive coordinator, quarterback, dominoes are falling off the bit. We got all of our running backs transferred out of here. All the quarterbacks were essentially gone. Now we got, our two quarterbacks back in Isaac and Devin Dampier. What has been the focus? What are they really hoping to get here in the next week or two in the portal?
Yeah, Utah's done a great job in the portal so far. I was talking with somebody that has a pretty good idea of what's going on up there at Utah with personnel and all that, and I think it seems like Utah's pretty pumped up about the guys that they've been able to land the last few days. They've landed 6 commitments, 7 with Devin Dampier coming midweek. Getting Dampier was so big because you got that quarterback to come in with the offensive coordinator. That's so huge, right? To have that piece, and now Devin Dampier is going to be instrumental in bringing and recruiting others to come play with him in this offense. And so that's the focus now, is building out the skill positions. I know that wide receiver, they landed a kid, Creed Whittemore from Mississippi State. Modest production the last 2 seasons. He sat out this season to enter the portal. But he's a kid, was highly touted coming out of Gainesville, Florida, was a 4-star kid. A lot of, when you watch his tape going back to high school, it's reminiscent of Britton Covey in the sense that he was a quarterback, an athlete, a dynamic athlete playing quarterback. And, Utah's, feeling pretty good about his ability to kind of fit in this offense at receiver and be that productive type of pass catcher that they had at New Mexico with guys like Luke Wysong and Ryan Davis,
right,
who I think both eclipsed 800 yards. So, they feel good about that. And receivers going to continue to be a focus for them moving forward. I think, they want to add, they probably want to add 2 more, to Creed Whittemore. And then at running back, they also, are pretty interested in adding another one. They've got a kid, Wayshawn Parker from Washington State, coming in for a visit this week. And Wayshawn is, and obviously playing under Coach Atuaya, there's that relationship there, and that's key. And Wayshawn Parker is one of the top prospects in the transfer portal. So, they landed another running back on Sunday, and Mike Washington Jr., who's a bigger back at 6'2", 215 pounds. If they can add Wayshawn Parker to that, that's a pretty good pair of running backs to bring into this offense with what they have coming in with the freshman and Mike Mitchell still being in the room as well. So building the skill positions, though, that's been the biggest focus for Utah since landing Dampier. They've done a good job of addressing needs on the defense side of the ball, adding a pass rusher in Jackson Jones, adding in Donovan Son was actually in the transfer portal last year and was at or near the top of the list for Utah last cycle before they landed Cameron Calhoun. Donovan Sanders is a guy that I know that they're pretty fired up about to have him. 6'3", 195 pounds, lanky athlete, and so they're fired up about him. So they've done a good job, again, adding good pieces on defense, adding a couple of key pieces on offense, and I think you're going to continue to see Utah build out this transfer portal class. I wouldn't be surprised if they add another 5 to 7 guys when it's all said and done, over the next couple of weeks.
Before we let you go here, Steve, as the transfer portal kind of moves on here and, teams are complaining about, not being able to really get things done because they're playing in bowl games still and things like that, do you see it as a significant advantage while teams right now are able to add and subtract guys while other teams are trying to still figure out what's going on during the while their games are still being played? A lot of coaches are coming out of the woodwork talking about how mad they are about it. I would think that maybe you get enough noise, you get the significant change off of something like that, or do they need to keep it this way?
I think there's always room for adjustments because December has always been the most insane month, in college football. Because, again, we just had National Signing Day a couple weeks ago, and the lead up to that can always be just hectic and insane. Then you get the transfer portal that opens around the same time, and then you have bowl games, and then so there's just so much going on in the month of December. I think college football would benefit significantly from either moving the signing day up even further in the calendar, to November, October even, and having that out of the way even sooner, so it's not an issue. Because while they're dealing with all of that, they're also dealing with, or I shouldn't say dealing with, but they're also recruiting their own players constantly. I was talking with somebody, and he was saying 80% of his time is occupied by calls of players on their own team, in terms of just guys getting new offers and wanting to renegotiate and all that. So 80% of their time isn't even on the transfer portal and isn't even on National Signing Day or bowl prep. It's about retaining your roster. And so, there's just a lot going on in the month of December. I hope that they make changes. But with regard to your question, Utah is taking advantage of it because they have to, right? Like, they didn't have the success they needed to be preparing for a bowl game. So they have nothing else to do but take advantage of these opportunities to bring guys in. And that's why we've seen 7 commitments already, and they're on the verge of adding a few more, over the next few days and weeks as well. So, it's an unfortunate, unfair system, but that's just the way it is, and you got to take advantage of it. Utah would certainly love to be playing in a bowl game themselves, but they aren't, and so they've just got to go to work and better the team as best they can with what they have available to them.
Steve Bartle, you can read his byline there at KSLSports.com. Anything Ute related, Steve's on top of it. You can follow him on X as well, all the socials, and you're going to get the best insight. And you're going to get a lot of this stuff, a lot of rumors and things. Look, I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and I was like, look, I'm not really a gossip guy. And then I was like, actually, yes, I am. I love it. Are you kidding? Come on. College football gossip is the best, man. And any of this. And I think the transfer portal gossip is as good as any. I mean, honestly, the drama that comes in and out of the transfer portal is just going to be phenomenal. And what a world we live in now where guys leave the program for a full year and can come back and say, Coach, can I come back? And they go, sure. Yeah. Why not? I mean, it's a wild time to be up at the University of Utah and in college football. So, Steve, we appreciate it, man. We'll chat with you again.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you guys.
There you go. Steve Bartle, everybody.